Thanks everyone for joining this another cmBuilder seminar like workshop. This is our first of the 2024, hopefully first of many, right? So we usually do these type of workshops once a month, and it's a good way for us to connect with our customers to let you guys know about the latest things that we've learned that other people are using, questions that most like a lot of people are having. So like we bring those questions in here to be able to go and like address that for like a bigger community. And also it's a good way for us to create that sense of community as well. So you guys have the chat open over there. You can share your questions and like comments about the things that we're going to show today. Javi and Callum are here with me today to help like moderate the questions. And I would just let Javi introduce like the next event that we're going to do next week. So go ahead, Javi, take it away.
Yeah, I'm going to just take a minute to shamelessly plug next week, Wednesday. We're going to have we don't do this very often, but we're going to do like we call it CM Roundtable event. We're going to have 4 customers showing projects, talking shop, from like VDC directors through to like 30-year veteran superintendents type folks. And so the idea is to just share experiences, learnings, look through some projects, and then I'm going to spend a couple minutes talking about our product roadmap and kind of the vision for the future of cmBuilder, and what we're trying to achieve over the coming years. And then we're going to finish with Q&A. So I'm going to pop the sign up in the chat here, and some of you have already signed up. Thank you for that. We have about 250 or 300 people signed up already, so it looks like it could be a good event. But if you're able to make it, did it work? Would be great. If you can't make it, just go ahead and sign up and we'll send you the recording after. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Javi. And so let's go through the workshop agenda that we have today. First, I'm gonna kind of like go through the best practices and the step-by-step or the important schedules. A lot of people ask me like if they're able to bring in their schedules inside cmBuilder, and like the quick answer is yes. But we wanted to discuss a couple of points that related to that as well, like when you should be doing that, when you should try to create the milestones manually, and so on and so forth. Then I'm going to just go through like 2 major types of animations that we have. This is something that I usually just bring in. I don't include that on the standard training. So some people on the call might not have yet like got the chance to see the instructions about this, how to create animations. So we're going to go through those quite quickly. Then we're going to go through some feature updates on how we can import model copies now, updates on the surrounding buildings and the topographic lines, and then we're going to jump into some tips and tricks, right? So the recording of this session is going to be available in around 24 hours. So we have a lot of other workshops in YouTube as well, if you want to go check them, and you can use the Q&A and chat for questions, right? So Callum will be moderating them, and Callum, I'm using just one screen here today, so I cannot see if anyone like raises their hand or interact with the chat. So you can just like interrupt me while I'm talking, okay? Cool. So let's go start with like a quick step-by-step on how to import a schedule in cmBuilder. For some of you, this might seem quite basic, but I would just wanted to refresh that idea of like what is this process, what is the idea of connecting your scenario with an external file, right? And then we're going to go through some best practices and things that we suggest that you try to do on your end while you're doing that, okay? So we're going to use our event project, right? So while we're under the Eye of Sauron over here, let's just ignore that guy over there, and let's bring in our schedule. Okay, so cmBuilder can import schedule of several different formats, and to start, you're basically going to click on project setup, then you're going to go into imported schedule, and you will be able to bring in your file over here. If you click on more, you can see all the different types of files that we can import directly. So it's basically just a drag and drop. So you don't need to convert your P6 file, your project file to any other format. You just simply drag and drop that file format in here. Okay. So whenever you already have files available inside your project for other types of scenarios, they will also be available for you to browse existing files. So I'm going to click on this guy over here, and I will take like a project file that I already have imported from another time, right? So this is the first view of our import schedule session, action. And basically this will show the same indentation that you have on the original file, right? So this will show a list of all of your tasks, what are their start dates and the end dates, right? So and which type of date you're going to convert into a milestone. So one thing to keep in mind is that cmBuilder does not work in the sense of a task by task animation where you connect a geometry of a column, for example, with a start date of that task and the end date of that task on your schedule. In cmBuilder is a little bit different. Basically, you're going to focus on the major milestones or the major dates that will show the progress of your simulation. So basically, in the same milestone, you're going to show a bunch of different parts popping up on your screen at the same time. Okay. So at this stage, we usually suggest that you really focus on the end dates of your tasks. And the reason why is that, for example, if I expand my excavation and shoring over here, and I have my mobilization, the bulk excavation stage 1 and 2, and detailed excavation. So for the mobilization date, I will bring the end date only because I want to show what are the new parts that will show up on my screen once I get to that end date. So if I mobilize my site and I have like my fences, my offices, and all of those parts I'm going to bring in from my library into the scenario, I want to see the moment where they're going to be executed in real life, right? So that's my suggestion. Always focusing on the end dates. And for other elements, like you're going to bring in, for example, your bulk excavation stage, you want to show the end stage of that action, but you also might want to bring in the first date where you show what are the mobilization that you're going to need to do for your excavation. So your equipment coming into the site, where are going to be your routes for hauling dirt out of the site or bringing stuff in, and what are the traffic controls you're going to need to use, and so on and so forth, right? So for dates that you actually need to show what's going to happen on the start because you're mobilizing more logistical equipment or you're changing the shape of your site, the layout of your site, that's when we suggest that you bring the either just the start date or both dates, right? But mainly on this selection, we are going to focus on the end dates. Another thing that is interesting on this view is that you can expand all the levels, but keep in mind that your schedule file probably won't be as simplified as this one. This only have 42 tasks, but usually schedule files, they have 1,000, 2,000 lines, and that's a lot to expand and consume. So we're gonna go through some best practices on how to diminish that kind of effort, okay? So in here, we can hold control and select a bunch of different tasks at once and click on the end date to bring all the end dates, or we can hold shift and do the same thing basically. So you don't need to keep clicking on the end dates for every single one of these guys. You can just like do a multi selection and bring all the end dates. So when I hit next over here, the next thing that I'm going to see is the list of all the milestones that are going to be created. So this is the moment where you check the tasks that became milestones, right? Another tip on this stage over here is to deactivate this append and start finish to milestone names, because when you have this selected, there's going to be a limitation of how many characters you can have in the name of the milestones. So usually because I am always prioritizing the finish dates and the end dates, I know that these dates are all related to the finish. But if I ever brought in like a start date for some task, like this one over here, for example, I can just double click on this guy and I can override the name of that task. Okay, so I can also override the dates and things like that. And this is where I can see what is the correlation between the milestones that are existing and the ones that are paired with a file. And these are all new tasks that are going to be created automatically over here. New milestones, sorry. So when I click apply changes, now my schedule that had no milestones will have like a bunch of different milestones for me to start working with. Okay, so these are all paired milestones, and paired milestones are the ones that will change if there is a new version of your schedule. So if later in a month or two you have a new version of the schedule, you can come in here, update this with a new schedule, and then you would upload a new file that shows the different dates, and all the tasks that you selected before will already be automatically selected selected, and we are just going to bring in the new dates for them. So all your sequence will be automatically updated. So this is a good thing for you to have like maybe a baseline scenario, then you duplicate that to show like the different maturity levels of your schedule. Okay. So keep that in mind. And now I have a new schedule for me to work with. Okay, so this is the basic process of importing a schedule into cmBuilder. And let's go through some best practices that we usually suggest. And Callum, please feel free to chime in over here whenever you want. Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk about is the identification of the need of importing a schedule. Sometimes people keep thinking that they always have to have this connected with a file because later on you're going to have like something different and like you want to keep that like live scenario going on. But sometimes you're in like in a very early stage of your simulation of your project. So if you're going on a bid or something like that and you want to create something that is quick and simple, you don't need necessarily to keep like all those dates attached to your files. And that's a good way for you to kind of like separate what is the need of creating having this imported schedule or not, right? So I usually suggest that if you know that you are awarded the project or the project, or if you know that there's going to be like reviews of those dates, or if you want to keep something that will start to progress and that scenario is going to take more shape and be enhanced and improved throughout the lifetime of your project, then it's a good thing for you to import a schedule. But if you want to do like simplified simulations or something that you're just going on a bid and you want to take in like maybe 4 or 5 different dates so that shows like the overall progress of your site or different shapes of your logistics plan, you don't necessarily need to connect those to the schedule because the schedule is still like such an early stage that you might be overkilling this process. That's the idea. So you should always import a schedule when you know that the dates will be revealed and like it will be changing throughout time, so it will be easier to keep it synced with your original file if you have those dates, if you have your milestones connected to a file. And just like I mentioned before, prioritizing the end dates so you will show the parts popping up on your screen easily while you activate the milestones in your presentation. That's the best thing that you can do. Cool. The second thing over here that I have is that simplifying repeated operations. So this was a suggestion from Callum that I really liked, where when you have a project that has a lot of repeated levels, if you create a simulation that has the same amount of detail for the first level and all above, imagine having to watch a simulation or like review a video or something that the same operation happens like 30 times because you have like 30 levels. So you're going to show 30 times, you're going to have show just the columns, then just the beams, then just the slab, and so on and so forth. So instead of like doing something like that, my suggestion is for you to simplify those repeated operations. So like for the first time that you're showing a repeated operation, you show that in detail. And then for the next times, you show something that is a little bit more coarse. So instead of showing every element of the concrete pour, you can show the whole concrete cycle at once, right? So like what is captured on the one concrete cycle all at once, right? Without not necessarily showing the formwork and then the rebar and then the concrete going in and so on and so forth, right? Because that can create like a very cumbersome kind of simulation to watch. Focusing on the critical path, that's super important because your file is going to have like a bunch of different tasks. So understanding what is your critical path and what is that you want to show on your oh, sorry, let me open this again. What you want to show on your simulation is important, so to avoid you importing a lot of tasks that are not going to be relevant for your simulation, and it might create like a bunch of different milestones that are empty. So that's not a good way to go with this. So focusing only on the most important things to show, it's a good way to go. Cool. Using filter columns. So let me try to open that project over here. I don't know why it's not opening. Just give me one quick. Oh, I should have this open before I started the session. I apologize for that, but did I lose connection?
20 push-ups for Pedro. 20 push-ups. I want everyone to know that.
Yeah, I lost connection with Ignite. That's the problem. Like I cannot access Ignite for some reason. anyways, so what let me try Ignite again. Sorry about that. Um,
While you're doing that,
okay, I got caught
oh,
off
got it.
short-handed over here.
So while you're fixing that, I yeah, exactly. Chin ups, that's pushing it, Liam. But yeah, chin ups, pull ups, push ups, 20
Yeah.
push ups.
Sorry, you
And
want to
so
say something, Javi?
question. Yeah, well, there's a question. Good, Cal or Pedro. I see that you
Hmm.
use, this is from Adam. I see you using the 3D buildings out of Google Earth in lieu of the white box models. How did you do that?
Hmm.
Cal, I believe the last workshop we did last month was all on this. So
Yep.
Cal, do you mind just pop in the link to the last workshop for Adam? And
Yeah,
it goes
absolutely.
into a lot of detail. So Adam, if you want, you can just book a session with us and we can show you how to do it. Oh, Ben is one step ahead of us. Beautiful. Ben,
Some,
let's give Cal now. Ben, give Cal 10 more push-ups because he answered before us. Just kidding. Go ahead.
yeah. I'm sorry, but I'm like my Ignite is simply not working, and I lost connection with my files. Ugh. I apologize for that. So let me just download this file over here. So it's gonna be local, right? So let's go with that. Once this download opens, I'll show what I mean. But basically, the idea is that you will just focus on the critical path. Sorry about that. Filtering and text adjustments, right? So this is kind of like an important step of the way because when you bring in the files that will show up on the project over here. So let me open this. If you have names on your files that are like hard to identify what the name of your task is about, right? So if this name was just like a level 1, the milestone that's going to be created will take just the name of the task. So if the name of the task it does not have a kind of like does not doesn't have anything that correlates to what is its parent, it's going to be hard for you to understand like what that task is about. So for example, if I only had like level 1 written over level 2 written over here, right, which is very common, like the task that is created, the milestone that's going to be created in cmBuilder will carry just this name. So if I, in my envelope over here, I also name this level 2 and I import these 2 tasks as milestones, it means like you won't be able to identify what is what, right? So the idea is to try to keep the names or maybe override the names in here or create like a version of your file that has that concatenated kind of like naming convention into it. And I do have an Excel file that contains like some formula for you to do this kind of like automatically, and I can share with you guys later if you're interested in that. But the idea is that your task name should be clear enough to referring to what is going to be executed over there. Okay, so like don't depend on having the indentation or like the parents above that. So yeah, and then in terms of filtering, I always suggest that people that have control on their project or at P6 files should create a little column over here where you'll be able to just type in that this is a cmBuilder task or something like that, and then you can just mark which tasks are you going to import. So it will be easier to identify them in cmBuilder. So you will export a file that has only the cmBuilder tasks. So you can have your main file that has these marked, and then like adjacent files that will have just the filtered tasks. So it will be way easier for you to connect that into cmBuilder without having to go through like 1,000 lines. You will go through like only a few of them. Okay. The third thing, part of here is that we also have like a CSV template. A lot of people has these files, these schedule files in an Excel format. So instead of just dumping the Excel format over here, you have to put that on the template. So there is a download CSV template file over here where when I open this, you can see that it's just like the column names basically. So it's going to be the name of your tasks, the start, the end date, and the pairing ID. These two are optional. If you don't put in an end date, it will copy the start date, right? So one thing that you can do, and you have to put these on this kind of like date format as well. So you can even create a bunch of milestones over here manually and then bring them into cmBuilder with the CSV import and then just connect them all of them. And like it will be a way for you to create bulk create milestones all at once. Cool.
Can I get in there for a sec? Quick
Yep.
question or comment. So I know we're using Microsoft Project there, but lots of folks I think on this call using P6. Some are using Asta. There's lots of different file formats. So maybe if you don't mind, can we just pop the user guide of the page in the chat, Cal, just like all the file formats that are supported. So if you know, we're showing MPP, but it doesn't have to be MPP. There's XER and .pp and many other file formats. And the main thing there is just that if you have Excel or like you've exported to Excel, which we see a lot, and you reorganize things, just use that template and it has to be in that format. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Javi. Adding extra milestones to the original file. So this is a tricky one because sometimes you're going to need some extra granularity on your presentation. So you want to show things with like more steps than what is in your on your project on your schedule, right? So for example, if this slab grade over here or the foundations, right? So if I want to show the foundations in intermediate partial steps, like 3 or 4 steps of foundation pouring, we suggest that instead of importing this task into cmBuilder as a milestone and then adding manual milestones inside cmBuilder, you try to do this on the original file because this will help you keep the sync of everything, right? Having a simulation where you have a combination of paired and unpaired milestones might be harder for you to sync with new version of your file later, right? Because we will only be able to adjust the paired milestones and the manually created milestones, the unpaired ones, they won't be adjusted if you bring in a new version of your milestone, of your schedule. Cool. And then linking the schedule at the beginning. So that decision of like what I need on my project and like should I use the import schedule or should I go with a manual creation and whatnot? It's better if you try to do this at the beginning of your project and like importing the schedule will be some of the first actions that you do at your project because this will be easier for you to maintain once you start bringing in like more elements and like your simulation starts to progress and take shape, right? So it will be easier for you to manage if you decide to link the schedule at the beginning and not like halfway through it, right? Because halfway through it, you're going to have like a lot of milestones that were created manually, and we don't have yet like the process of linking manual milestones to a file, okay, to keep them linked. So we should bring them at the beginning. Cool. So these are just like a couple of best practices, and there are more that we usually share on one-on-one sessions. So if you want to, or if you are unsure about like this process and you want kind of like a one-on-one session, please reach out. Both me, Callum, and other people at the team are really happy to help with that. Okay. So let's go to the next step, which is the creation of animations, right? So this is something that a lot of people ask on how to do it, and we probably will have like a workshop dedicated to this later in the future. But the animation in cmBuilder is still an experimental stage. It's ready for like everyone to start using and testing it out. But we know that there are a couple of things that we might need to still adjust. That's why you don't see like a lot of things in the user guide pages related to that and so on and so forth. But we are happy to help and show you right now how to use that, right? So there are 2 types of animations that we create that you can create in cmBuilder. So the first one is the move on path. So basically it's for vehicles or people or anything that you want to move on top of like a specific line or a path. And there is the parameter animation, which is basically you are changing the values of the parameters on that resource over time, right? So let's learn how to do both. And I'm going to use the same project over here as an example. So the first one, what we need is we need to draw a line and we need to bring in a resource and then connect a template of an animation to that resource. So the template of the animations you're gonna find over here in our user guide. Callum, you can put the link over there for me. Basically, if you type in animate over here, you can just see like all the steps and the instructions on how to do that. And right at the beginning over here, there is a template for the resource animation that you can download, and it's gonna look like this at first. So ignore the coding that you see on this view over here. It's just like something that is on the back end, but there will be a download button over here for you to use. Ignite is really acting up today. So that's just trust me that once you open this, there will be a download button over here at the top. Okay, cool. So I will use that same file, right? I already have it downloaded over here. So basically, let me show you guys how we can build this up. Okay, so I will start by drawing a line over here in my project setup. I will click on 3D line, and I'll draw a line to define what is going to be a path of a truck or a car or anything like that. So let's use cars for now. And I'm gonna just make it so like a car is gonna come from here, and then it's gonna turn this way, and then go straight over here, and then it's gonna turn this way and go inside the construction site. Okay. So when I hit confirm, you can see this line right now. And for the presentation, what I usually suggest is that you disconnect this line from the timeline, so the line will be hidden by default. But for now, just for the presentation, I'm gonna create like a spacing of a line over here so we can visualize that pretty well. Okay, so here's my line that defines the path of the animation. The first point of my line is the start of the animation, and the end point of my line is the end of the animation. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put in like a vehicle over here. So I'm just gonna put in like any car, right? So Cybertruck, the prettiest vehicle of all time, right? So let's put this guy over here, and we can just now go into the visual programming tab, and this is where we're gonna drop in that file that you downloaded from our user guide, right? So let me find over here on my visual graph templates. I already have like a folder over here that contains all the templates that I usually use. So let me just drop this in here. This is the same file that you guys are gonna download from the user guide, and then the custom graph is created, and now we're gonna go and edit this. So basically, you can ignore a lot of what's in the screen right now, especially this red portion over here, because this is a template of a visual programming, right? So basically, you can do a lot with visual programming, but we already created some chunks of like work that is already done for you to save some time. Okay, so the for two things that we need to do at this view is to reconnect the main object. So basically, you're gonna bring in the main object over here, then select this view, and then select the object that you're working on. So in this case, the Cybertruck. And then you can also choose what is the 3D line that you're gonna follow. So this is gonna show a list of all the 3D lines available on your site. And if there are more than the ones that you're seeing right now over here, you're gonna see like the list of all of them, okay? So once it's completed, this is where you're gonna see, right? So there's gonna be the object will start to follow on top of that line. So from here, the template that you're gonna download from the user guide, there will be some controls over here that will show you how to adjust the speed and completion of this path and things like that. But basically, it's just like the most important one is going to be the speed controller, which will allow you to change what is the speed of this vehicle, right? So if I change the speed over here, you see that my vehicle is going to go a little bit faster, and so on and so forth. So like on the template that you guys are going to download, these will all be available over here for you to change a little bit easier. Okay. So this is a simple animation.
Pedro,
Yep.
quick question. And I think there's a way to do this, I believe. But Ben asks, is there a way to make it not loop and just stop at the end of the path, like do it once or tie to a milestone change or something like that?
So there is a way for you to do that inside the visual graph, but it's a little bit complex. So we suggest that if you want to show this and stop at some point on your presentation, I usually suggest that you change the milestone and then like end this object at this milestone, and then on the next one, you put another object over here that's parked, right? This is the easiest way, but there are ways to do that inside the visual programming as well.
You can
Cool.
set up triggers and rules that these
Yeah.
things initiate per
Yeah.
milestone, right? So you don't
Exactly.
like if you only okay.
Yeah, there are some things that we can do to this template over here that will allow you to control when the action stops, when the action ends, and also what is the trigger for that. If it's the scenario start, if it's a milestone change, or things like that. You can even do more like a animation start. Completes itself, then the object goes to another line, and so on and so forth. But these are more complex animations that we can learn over time. Cool. Okay, so this is animation type 1, move on path. And again, I'm just showing like the most basic actions of these animations, but there is more that we can complete. And I'm gonna show now the second type of animation, which is the parameter animation. So I'm gonna use a crane as an example. So if I take this guy over here and place it on top on my site, you're going to see the crane over there, and the crane has a lot of parameters, right? So usually when I know that I'm going to create an animation for an object that is an animation for the parameters, I prefer to take a screenshot out of this view over here, because this will tell me what are the limits of the animations, oh sorry, of the parameters, right? So this is going to be like relevant for us to not like make an animation that will apply a value that is not available within this range. Okay. And I also suggest that we change our view to length because, oh, sorry, to our units to meters, because at the moment, the visual graph only works with meters units. So I'm not going to use a template for this one. I'm going to create a new one just so you guys can see how that works. And basically, this little square over here, this object, represents the actual crane that I have over here, right? So we're going to double click on this and type in animate, and then there will be an option over here called animate bone. Bone and parameters in cmBuilder are the same thing. It's just like different ways of referring to them. You can also right click and add a node, and there's going to be a lot of options over here for you to try, but the animate bone will be inside animation and then animate bone over here. Cool. So basically, how these nodes work, they on the left hand side you have the inputs, on the right hand side you have the outputs. So I need to feed these node with information with inputs, right? So I'm going to take the bones out of my original object and bring into this file. So that way I can select all the parameters that are available for this object inside this node. If I don't connect anything, I cannot select this option. There will be no option available for me here. But if I do select it, I'll be able to see those options again. Okay. And the idea over here is that you will set up what is going to be the first value and the last value for that bone or that parameter, and what is going to be the duration for that parameter change. So let's say that I want to make my my jib rotate, right? So it's gonna go from 0 degrees to 180 degrees, and it's gonna take 2 seconds to do that. After that, let's say that I want to make my hook, where is my hook position over here? Hook height, hook length, da da da, anchor, anchor, anchor. I think it's gonna be the hook length, right? So then I'm gonna make my hook go from like a specific value, let's say 10 meters, then it will go to 30 meters, and then it also is gonna take 2 seconds. Then I'm gonna clone this guy, and after this is done, the hook height is gonna go from 10 to, I don't know, 50, something like that, right? So I need also to connected triggers. So when this action is done, it will trigger the next one. When this action is done, it will trigger the next one. And I want to make this go on a loop. So I'm going to create a sequencing over here. So I'm going to type in sequence. And once this action is finished, the other one will start. But I need to create trigger for the whole loop. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a button over here, just so I can click on that button and start the whole thing. So when I click on this, you see that my object rotates, then my hook moves, and then it goes down, right? And then there is a loop, right? So the whole thing is going that way. You see how my hook stayed over there at the bottom because I didn't create any action to bring that hook back to its original position. So it will be interesting after this action over here if we clone this and have it. So like once this is finished, it will start that. I will delete this node over here, connect my bones, and then once this guy is finished, my hook actually is gonna go back from 50 to 10 meters, right? So now it will do that action. So the hook will go down and then go up. See, so I just added a new operation over there. So it's an interesting way for you to kind of like create these actions, and this will keep playing on the loop. Again, there are ways for us to polish this and like create more granularity in this operation, but this is the easiest process, right? So you create the nodes to define how you're going to change your parameters within time. Cool. Any questions?
I have a
I
statement. So just for people that are looking at this and saying that it looks complicated, it's because it kind of is. And this is kind of step one where, all right, this is not the end state of this. This is kind of like there's quite a few users in our community here that have some visual programming background, and you can build your own scripts and tools and go crazy if you'd like to. But the end goal for us is to make this a much simpler user interface. Selecting start and end dates and just saying drive this car and it just does it, right? In terms of like making it much more like abstracting away the complexity of the visual graph.
mhm.
So keeping it's going to take us a few months more to implement this, but this is where we're going with this: is that you don't need to know any of this to be able to do these types of animations. But at the moment, this is how you can do it. And if you want to get more out of your simulations by some realistic kind of like animations, this is how you can do it.
Cool, cool, cool. Exactly. And just so you know, like if like any of you that are in the call right now cannot see that visual programming option over here, is because you have to go into your user settings and enable it on the experimental features over here. So just turn this guy on and also the other one on the bottom because this will enable that action. And this one over here, the line resource instancing, will make your scenario work faster if you were using a lot of linear resources. Okay. Okay, cool. So let's go back over here on the track and let's go to the next step. So import model copies. So there's one change that we did this week to the software, which allows you to bring in more than one copy of the same object of the same 3D model that you have imported into your scenario. So if you imported a model already to your scenario and you go into buildings and imported buildings, that model will still be available for you over here in existing buildings. So when you browse the existing file, you will be able to find the same model. And before you couldn't find that same model, but now you can, and you'll see over here how many copies are in use. So why is this important? For a couple of reasons. Sometimes you import a model where the parts that you brought in like are combined and you want to split them into major groups. So for example, I have these 2 copies over here of the same file, and let's say that I want this model to only have the structure and this model to only have the architecture. So I could come in here, open my tree structure, take a look at how these models are organized. So these are not Revit models, so like they are organized in a different way, but just as an example, if I start expanding like the folders for this file, you see that on level 1, my architecture and my structural file parts are all combined within that folder of my level 1. So this might make it harder for you to create sequences depending on how these models are organized on the original file. So you can bring in these copies, for example, and then let's say that you want to remove just the architecture on this file and keep just the structure, right? So you can go and type in arc over here, and once you select the root of this first file, it will only select the parts that match this criteria of search, right? So we basically only select parts that will have arch on their name, right? So in this case, it will work pretty well. So I can just take this guy, go into edit model, auto model elements. And then now that I know this is only selecting the architectural parts, I can click on this guy over here, remove model element, and then it will remove all these parts that are selected from this 3D model in this scenario. Okay, so I could apply the same thing for the other model over there and have a model that shows only the architecture and the model that shows only the structure. Okay, I'm not going to do this right now because this will trigger it will refresh the scenario, and it might take some time because it's kind of like working on the back end and how things are connected over there. So just keep that in mind that you now can filter this out. And also this is important because sometimes people will have like a model that has, let's say, trusses or things like that, and you want to isolate that truss because you want to show where that truss is being assembled first and then how they're going to move to the side and whatnot. And we know that in cmBuilder, the imported models that you have that represent buildings and things like that, you cannot change the position of this model over time. So once you place that position, it's going to stay there. So if you want to create that sense of like having different stages of where a truss is supposed to be, you can import just one file and then create copies of that and put them in different locations and connect it to different milestones. Cool. I know that some users already asked me that in the past, and now you're able to do that as well. Okay. So let's go to the second update on the surroundings and topographic lines. So we changed the way that the surrounding buildings are now. You can manage their visibility, right? So if you go into settings, before there was an option over here, surrounding buildings. So we moved that option to the tree structure, and there is a reason why we did that and that way is because we are gonna standardize how our tree structure works, and like a lot of parts that a lot of features that were created in different times, they might have one thing here or there that might feel different between the different features, and we are looking forward to standardize that and keep them all visible at the tree structure at the same at all times. So this is like the tree structure that you see open over here is it's going to become like a very powerful tool to add elements into cmBuilder, to filter elements that you're working on at the moment, and so on and so forth. So we plan to give more power to this list because it's visible and it's easy for you to select the parts that you're working on and so on and so forth. And the first step of this process of standardization was to move the surrounding masking over here. Other elements might also move to the tree, right? Especially if there are elements that are on our 3D view easily in their actual parts that you can edit and things like that. So expect a little bit more of these changes coming soon. And now the way that you hide or show them is basically you just expand the tree structure, and then you will see the surrounding masking over here. So you can right click and do show selection, or right click and hide selection, right? So there's a shortcut as well that you help you with that, and you can go forward and back with that. Okay, cool. The second update related to the topographic lines is that now they are way more precise and accurate. And so let me hide these buildings over here for now. And I'm going to click to show the topographic lines. So topographic lines would basically show what is the topography of your terrain. So if I change this to satellite view, now they have this kind of like shading, a different shading, right? To show like what are the deeper areas and what are the higher areas. And also it's a shading that applies to the whole scenario, to the whole area. So you will see that it kind of like there's a almost like a filter, like orange filter going placed on top of everything. And this is easier for you now to identify parts or like terrains that are quite complex and things like that. And another change is that this is now aligned with the units that you're using. So if if I'm working on metrics over here and I start measuring my elevation of these contour lines, right? So you see that there's 80 meters and then 81 and then 82 and so on and so forth, right? However, if I go in here and change my user settings to feet, now these lines are different, and then you can measure and you're gonna see them now referencing feet instead of meters. Cool. So this is something that we changed recently, and it really helps because like you can see the interactions of changes that you've done to your terrain, especially if you're working with custom terrain, right? So when you turn on the custom terrain feature, right away the topographic lines will show, so you would notice that difference. But if you don't want to see the topographic lines, you can simply turn them off from here. Okay, but this is a very interesting way for you to visualize the changes that you're applying on your custom terrain tool. Cool. Okay, so let's move on to the next things over here. So now we're gonna just discuss a couple of tips and tricks, right? So the first one that I want to show today is how to create retaining walls using a linear resource that is copied and repeated vertically, right? So I have like a part of my scenario over here is already kind of capturing that. So you can see like this area created with a retaining wall with lock blocks and things like that. But if I want to do that from the start, I have a couple of options to reuse the same shape of the sketch of the lock block, but I'll start do it in the simplest way possible. So basically, if you're going to resources and equipment, and I'm using the lock block as an option over here, but you can use whatever items on our calendar, sorry, on our library that you want to use for your retaining walls, right? So you can use concrete walls or anything like that. So basically, we're gonna just start drawing like a shape that is similar to the wall that we are creating the retention for, right? And it's always good to work on your 2D mode when you're drawing a sketch. And I'm gonna go all the way up to here, right? So when I hit confirm, now you can see that the lock block is being projected on the terrain. Basically, the shape, every one of these lock blocks are being placed on the terrain, right? So and I will deactivate this. The reason why is because I'm gonna start copying and pasting this lock block vertically several different times, and if I keep them all projected on the terrain, you won't see them going up. Basically, they will all be overlapping with each other. Okay, you could be more precise with displacement that I did over here by snapping the lines that you have to the walls that are there. But let's go with the simple ways first because we only have 10 minutes more. Okay. So the idea now to create this sense of like retaining walls is that we're gonna copy and paste a couple of repetitions of this object over here. So I'm gonna copy paste and place that in the roughly the same spot, and I'll just do that a couple of times. Okay. And then once I've done that a couple of times, I'm gonna start moving these guys up. So you can see that the control for the movement is placed on the first point that I selected to start my sketch, but you can always go with the user defined to like, let's say that you wanna focus on this area. So you're gonna click on user defined over here, then double click on your object, okay? So now you move this object up, and then you do the same thing with the one below to kind of like match them with the terrain that you're gonna use or you're gonna create the retainment for. Okay, and that's it. And now basically I have like the same lock block going throughout the whole area, but of course like there are areas that are being retained over here that I don't want. So the idea is that you can go and just adjust the shape of the sketch to represent what is going to execute. So this is a good opportunity to also talk about this other option over here, the live preview for resource sketches, right? So when you are editing a sketch and you click on settings, you have a lot of options over here. My personal preference to work with like this all like turned off, but if I need more reference on my view, I will bring them in like on and off. And the latest improvement that we did on this is the live preview over here. So when you turn on the live preview, you can see like the adjustment of the things that they are controlled by that sketch in real time. This is only applied to the resources at the moment. So in this case, because I need to see the wall behind it, I will deactivate the live preview so I can see like where my lock block is supposed to kind of like end. So I'm going to click on this to see what it is. Instead of confirming the sketch and then coming back to this and editing again, it's easier if you turn on and off your live preview. Cool. I moved this by mistake over here. Okay. So let me cancel that and do this again. And yeah, so that's basically it. So let's go back and just adjust all of the ones that we have over here. And of course, like I'm gonna do just a couple of them so we won't like spend too much time. And it's easy like that. Where does it finish? So like we just need to delete the lines that we are not gonna use. And please, if you have any feedback about this process or any of the tools that I showed here today, just put them into the chat over there, okay? And the last one is going to be this guy. Actually, I don't think that we're going to need too much from this guy. So I'm going to create like a point over here. A lot of people ask how to create points or add points to the sketch or thing like that. So for you to edit your sketch and create more points and things like that, you can click on the line for you to restart the line from a specific point that already exists, right? Or you can click on the line to add a new point and split the line into, right? And the way that I kind of like cancel the line action if I started the line action already is just to click on move. So we would change the tool to something else. And it's always good to learn these shortcuts while you're using the tool because it will allow you to work way faster. Cool.
One element I might ask you to also talk a little bit about that overlap excessive length. That's kind of an interesting thing to share as well. I'm not sure if you were planning to do it. So things like this where where it's a fixed item. So jersey barrier, concrete jersey barrier, or lock block. And if you're trying to get an accurate QTO, in theory, depending on what you sketch as a polyline, you may or may not be able to fit. Like before, we just kind of you can either like just make it work on the sketch, or you could do that overlap excessive length versus not to get a more accurate spacing, right? So you can kind of play with it. So if you want to get an accurate QTO of those after, maybe you can talk a bit about what the difference is there.
Yeah, so the overlapping existing, I chose like the worst resource possible to show this. So
do it with the lock block. I think the lock block actually is a pretty good one.
I like to do it with the fences because you can see the posts where they are, right? So basically, the overlap excessive length is what we used to have before that you would turn on overlap or not, right? So basically, what it happens is that whenever you're creating like the sketch and the pattern of objects will show up on top of that sketch, the way that it works is that we need to fill all the length of these lines, individual lines, with a panel. So like there won't be any openings or anything like that. So by default, what happens is that we start the pattern from one end, and then we start the pattern from another end, and they will meet in the middle, and they will overlap in the middle. So this is what it means. The overlap is excessive length. You will notice over here, if I stretch like this fence a little bit more, you notice that that over here in the middle, there is a duplication of the fences, right? So the fences, they will kind of like overlap with each other. And if I deactivate this, it means that there will be a spacing created over there to kind of like fill in, it won't fill in the gaps with more fences, you know. So this might affect the QTO that you have, because you will see that like you create like one or two more extra panels per segment because of that overlap, right? So if you want to see what is the QTO that we have over here, you can click on specs to see how many panels are placed on this area and what is the total length of that panel as well, of that panel segment that I created. Okay, and these are all also available for you to export on the resource kit. So you can download this little Excel file over here that will show you like the quantity of all of these elements and so on and so forth. So you see over here how I have like a like my lock blocks are in here so I can see and whatnot, right? So that's it basically. So this is the quantity of the lock blocks. Each one of those that um, continuous line that I created will have like these quantities, and over here in the bottom is the total length of those lines. Okay, you're seeing them duplicated over here because I have them another section of the lock blocks in my second milestone over here. That's why they're duplicated.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just wanted to say like fences do in real life overlap at times, but like things like lock blocks or like Jersey bears might be more difficult because it's like concrete. So I find that the sketch with the preview and like the algorithm to try to like make it fit for the line is kind of interesting because you can kind of like adjust your polyline and see the lock blocks changing to get it to fit, right? So you can change like what would be the line that you would, the distance you would need to max to actually have no gaps. So
Yeah.
the preview with the fit is kind of interesting if you want to be more accurate with it with regards to like visualizing how many lockbox you'll be able to get into the position.
Cool.
Got in the weeds there. We got in the weeds. Got in the weeds in the 55th hour. Sorry guys, derailed everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, so let me go with like the last two tips and tricks that I have over here. So one is editing all IFC classes of a model, right? So you can, this was actually a tip, kind of like something that Shane suggested the other day, right? So when you have like a model like an IFC model like this, where you have access to the whole IFC structure of that model, right? So you can see like all the levels and what are the groups they have of parts within those levels. So like if I select this, I'm only selecting the slabs on level P1, then only the slabs are defined for level P2. But let's say that you want to select all the levels at once or override like all of them at once. So there is one interesting way to do that. One is that you can use the kind of like the naming over here to search the whole thing, and then you will select all the slabs, but this depends on you having the correct name for those parts. But another way to do that is that you can select the whole model, right? So let me hide the architectural model over here, and let me hide also the terrain so we can focus on having just a couple of parts in the view. So yeah, so if I select the whole model and I want to see this whole thing with one list of the IFC classes in my tree, I can just for the temporarily edit all these model elements, then go into properties, and this will show you that all of these parts will have multiple classes at multiple levels. But if I take like this and just add a different level, like I can select one existing one, or I can type in a temp level over here. So this will override the definition, the attribute of level for all of the parts that I selected, right? And when I expand this, now I can select all the beams of my part of my model. I can select all the columns, all the footings and whatnot. So you can kind of like apply actions to all of them at once if you want to. And let's say that you're done with the actions that you want and so on and so forth. You can just go back into your properties, and then you can deactivate this and delete this, override, and this will go back to its original kind of like structure. Okay, so this is just like a quick workaround for you to create a view of your tree that will show only the IFC classes of that model. Okay, and the last thing is the generic resources. We have some generic resources that we placed over there in our library, and the cube is one that I usually suggest people to use it whenever they want to do something fast and they know the shape of like an object or something like that. Let's say that I'm going to bring in a container or something like that, and that is very specific, and I don't want to wait for the resource team to do that. Even though like we work really fast on creating new resources, sometimes you want to do something like in 2 minutes or 3 minutes. You can simply type in cube over here, and there is a cube that you can like just adjust this to show like your parametric shapes of anything basically, and you can apply the same actions that you apply to this guy as you would do for any resource. So you can make it move on a path, you can make it like animations for the parameters, you go up and down and like change colors or things like that. So this might be even faster than like creating masses, for example, right? Faster than creating masses for rectangles, but also you have more capabilities in terms of creating the animations, changing colors, and so on and so forth. Even putting logos if you want to. So that's the idea. Okay, so there are some generic resources in here. And if you want to request any generic shape, you can also do that, right? So like we can put these in our library to help you create like a combination of shapes to do like the specific thing or like an object. So just let us know what you are interested in us to create and add to the library by going over here on resource request and let us know what you're interested in seeing there. Okay. Cool. So I'm 1 minute after the time, the limit over here. So I'm gonna stop right now to open for questions from the team, and I'll stop sharing just so I can see what's going on the chat. Mhm. Yeah, so Javi is putting in there the spotlight event for everyone to sign up. And yes, Ben, I agree. Resource request is the best. We have our silent heroes over here in the back end that people that are modeling these resources left and right, and you usually don't see their face a lot. But we are very responsive on that as well. So like everyone that wants to ask for new elements in the library, please just pop in there. And just to remind that there's no limit in terms of how many requests you can do, and also they are like included on the subscription as well. Cool.
All right.
All right. So
Nice
cue
job,
the
Pedro.
music.
Nice job, Cal. Outro music. Thanks, everyone. See you next month. We'll do this monthly, so we'll reach out next month and reach out to us if we can help you with anything. We try to be very available and can organize one-on-one sessions as needed.
Cool. Yeah, and then just putting like an image over here that is interesting, showing the cmBuilder resource and the real life element that we took a picture of. So yeah, pretty cool. Okay, it was a pleasure, everyone, and see you all.